G'day guys, Socket here. In today's episode we're going to look at the question of measurement levels. So what volume level should I be doing my measurements at when I'm doing a tune, that type of stuff. Now this is a topic that I've touched on before, but I thought I'd make a standalone tutorial and just put all the information in one spot for you guys. So today we're going to dive into the topic of measurement levels and answer this very important question. But before we get into that, I just want to cover off a common myth or misconception that people have about measurement levels. And that is, I want to take my measurement levels as loud as possible because I want my system to be as loud as possible. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way, guys, even though it feels like it should. And I used to make this mistake too when I first got into co-audio tuning. I'm worried about, if I don't have my measurement levels at 100 dB or something, and I drop them down to 80 dB, I'm somehow losing 20 dB of volume that I otherwise could have. If you are doing that, then you are more likely to be pushing your system into clipping and causing distortion and things like that, and putting your speakers in danger of damage, right? What you really want to be doing is setting your measurement levels so that you have sufficient headroom across your system so you're able to crank it and not go into the distortion area. In fact, there are lots of other things that will affect your overall system volume that has much more impact than what measurement levels that you take your measurements at. So we're going to explore all of those things today in today's tutorial. So let's have a talk about the things that actually determine the maximum volume that your system can produce. And that boils down to the amount of amplification that you have in your system, and whether your speakers can deal with that amount of power. And so, for example, let's say you have a head unit with a built-in amplifier circuit that can produce 50 watts, and that is what is driving your speakers. Now, that means that your system will never be any louder than 50 watts worth of power, right? And if you go to the other end of the spectrum where you have, a whole bunch of standalone amplifiers, and let's say you have, an amp that's capable of producing 500 watts per channel, as long as your speakers are rated at 500 watts or above, where they can actually handle all of that power, then, of course, that's going to be much louder than a 50 watt head unit, right? So it's your amps and your speakers that determine how loud your system can play. So if you want a super loud system, then you need to upgrade your amps and speakers. But what has this got to do with your measurement levels? Well, if you try to turn your measurement levels all the way up, or tuning at what we call higher levels, changes the way that your system behaves. When you're pushing your amps to the limit or you're pushing your speakers to the limit, it changes the way that the speakers compress and they distort, and the noise that you have in your system, right? So the idea is not to try to max out your measurement levels. The idea is to tune your system at a level that gives you the best quality output, and then use your gain structure to get the most clean output out of your system that you can. But guys, you already knew that the loudness of your system would be dictated by the equipment that you're using. It doesn't really explain why cranking up the volume to do your tuning measurements is not a great idea. So let's go take a quick look at that now. Okay, the main reason you don't want to do this is because head units and other electronic components in your system will have issues when they're turned up very high. For example, it's fine up to this point, but when you get to this point and beyond, then your head unit or your amp or whatever it is will lose their shit, for want of a better term, right? And if you turn your head unit, for example, up to close to its maximum volume, there's a very, very good chance it will be distorting, right? So turning up your system your system's volume will increase the sound of the background hiss, and you probably know that already. But this background hiss is what we call the noise floor, right? It's made up of the hiss that's in your system, the environmental noise and other stuff that's around you when you're taking measurements. But just increasing the volume of your system will also increase this background hiss. In fact, if you can hear a hiss in your speakers when you're not playing anything, it means that your gains are turned up too high and you need to turn them down to a point where you can't hear that hiss anymore. Now, when it comes to taking measurements, you can't hear this background hiss over the pink noise or sweep signal, but it's there, and so turning up your volume too loud will actually introduce this hiss that will contaminate your measures. The second issue about turning your volume up too loud is distortion. Now, I am going to make a tutorial on distortion where we'll go over the details, but in short, distortion occurs when you push a system or a component in your system beyond its limits, and it creates a bunch of sounds or harmonics, which kind of look like this, all of these spikes, particularly at the high frequency end of the spectrum, right? Now, it happens because when the peaks of a measurement or music or whatever it is that you're playing can't be reproduced because you've pushed the system beyond its limits, then the signal kind of comes out like this. And that's why it's kind of called clipping. So when you're taking measurements in REW and you go beyond REW's maximum or clipping point, then the measurements get kind of cut out. And you kind of end up with this kind of pattern where you've got data missing below, and in this case below 30 Hertz, it should be rolling off like this and all of that type of thing, but it's not, right? All of this data is being clipped. So if you see this kind of pattern in your measurements, you know that your measurement level is turned up too high. So the aim is we want to avoid having our measurement volumes too loud where the background hiss or distortion can affect your measurements, right? And and keep your measurements out of this clipping zone, right? You also don't want to have the measurement so quiet that you're not capturing a clean signal, right? So you want to make sure that your noise floor is, your signal is at least 40 dB above your noise floor or more if you can achieve it. And so you want to set your measurement levels a little bit above where you would listen normally to your system. And for most people, that's somewhere between 70 and 90 dB. Now, I aim for 85 dB, 80 to 85 dB when I'm doing my measurements, which is about 2/3 to 3/4 on the volume knob on my head unit. And so when I'm doing my measurements, it kind of ends up looking a bit like this. I'll have most of my measurements around the 85 level, but when I come to do my mid bass and my subs, which will always be the loudest measure because they've got the most volume, that these measurements will still, even though they'll be higher than 85 decibels, they will still be under the REW clipping limit, right? And so if you're not sure where to find that, it's down here at the bottom of the screen. And it will tell you, for the calibration that you got put into REW, and that's not your mic calibration, this is the calibration of the sound pressure level scale. It will tell you what the maximum sound level that REW can accept before the signal will clip. Now, some of you guys with eagle eyes will have probably spotted that in my tutorials, not all of my measures are at 85 decibels. And I'm not talking about the target level that I'm setting when you're doing your EQ work. I'm talking about the decibel levels that you're recording for your full range measurements. So if you check some of my tutorials, some of them will be at 70, some at 50, some at 90, and it's not because I'm measuring them at different levels, it's because I've done so many tunes now that I know just by playing with the head unit volume where around about 85 decibels is. And so if I was to calibrate the SPL scale in REW, then you would find that those measurements would all be coming out around about the 85 decibel mark. But there are two things that you should always do before you start doing your tuning. The first one is to set the gains on your amplifiers so that your system is playing at its maximum level without going into the clipping zone. And the second thing would be to calibrate your pink noise or your sweep signal using your microphone and then entering that value into REW so the scale in the SPL graphs is calibrated and correct. And so I've done standalone tutorials on both of these topics before, but rather than sending you to go look up the links and check and find them yourselves, what I've done is just taken a few screen grabs from those tutorials, and so I'll play those for you now. So the first one we'll cover is gain setting with your amps, and the second one will be on calibrating the SPL scale in REW, right? And then I'll be right back. Okay, so the method for setting gains with an oscilloscope is very similar to the method that we use with the multimeter. So first of all, you want to mute all speakers in your system so you don't accidentally send a 60 hertz tone at full volume to speakers that you're not going to be using, and then you want to disconnect the speaker wires from the amplifiers that you're setting the gains on. Next, you want to play a sine tone at 60 hertz for your subs and mid bass, or 1000 hertz for your mids and tweeters. You want to turn up your source head unit, your phone, whatever it is that you're using as a source unit to its maximum volume. Then you wanted to attach the oscilloscope probes to the amplifier outputs. That's where you had your speaker wires connected, and then adjust the oscilloscope controls until you can see that the signal or the sine tone, which looks like that wavy line, and then you can adjust the gain knob up and down until you can see the signal clipping, right? And when I mean the signal clipping, it's got the tops of the peaks sort of cut off and you end up with a flat top. When you start seeing that, you can back the gain knob off until the signal returns to its normal shape and is no longer clipping. And when you get to that point, you can disconnect everything because your gains are set. Taking measurements, I just want to calibrate the measurement microphone against the test signal so that we've got the scale on the graphs properly calibrated. Now, often you'll get a pop-up about this, and I usually click through because I'm not really that interested, but today I'll show you how to do that calibration very quickly. So here in REW there is an SPL, or a sound pressure level meter tool up here in the toolbar. You can just click on that, and you just turn this little tool on and off using this red button, but it allows you to either log your sound pressure levels if you're trying to measure your background noise or something, or calibrate your microphone against a test signal. And so today we're going to do the calibration, so we'll click on that and we will get a little window with a pull down that allows you then to select either a REW generated calibration signal or an external signal. And because we're doing analog mic sweeps and REW is connected to the DSP via audio interface, we're going to select a REW calibration signal so that REW can generate the signal through the speaker that we've selected, in this case the left mid. So all we do is click on OK. Now we can hear the test signal in the background, and now we'll take your sound pressure level meter. So mine is an app on my phone, and I'll place that next to the measurement microphone. You can see the numbers jumping around a bit, and we want to pick a number that's kind of in the middle, so that's 81.6, feels about right to me, and then we hit finish. Then we'll get a pop-up that says the maximum sound pressure level that you can measure with this calibration is 124 dB. That's perfectly fine. I don't expect any of the measurements that I'm going to do with any of the speakers today are going to get anywhere near 124 dB. So I'll just click OK, and that is the calibration of the mic versus the text signal done. And so we can close the tool. And if I just jump into and do a quick sweep measure of the left mid that we were just using, we'll just check that that's recorded properly and everything's set at the right level. So that's the sweep, and here's the measure, and if I run my cursor through about there, it tells me that I've measured this at 83.9, call it 84 decibels, which is about the sound level that I've got set on my head unit, where I've got it turned up to about 2/3 of maximum volume. Normally you want to sort of measure somewhere between 75 and maybe 90 dB, so this is right in the sweet spot. So it looks like everything's ready to go. That's how you do your calibrate your microphone to the tests, to your test level volume. And so let's go get on and do some EQ work. So there you go, guys, 2 little clips on gain setting your amps and calibrating REW. If you want to watch the full versions of those tutorials, I'll leave the links down below in the description so you can jump back and check them out. So in summary, guys, the first thing you should always do is set up your your gains on your DSP and your amps and things like that. So you've got your system set up so it will play at its maximum level without pushing into the distortion and clipping zone. Then before you start your tune, you just want to play your pink noise and sweeps and calibrate REW against that level. So turn your head unit or your source up to 2/3 or 3/4 volume. Take a measurement with your sound level app near the mic position, see what level it's playing at, and turn it up and down so you've got it around about 85% on your 85 decibels on your level meter, and then do your REW calibration, and that should put you in a point where you're getting a nice clean signal, nice clean measurement without any distortion or hissing or anything like that, and still have enough headroom for your mid bass and your subs to fit into the REW measurement without hitting the REW clipping limit, right? And so and you should get a great set of measures, and if you set up your amp gains properly, you will get maximum levels out of your system without the dangers of distortion or clipping. So guys, if you're in the mindset of, wow, I need to make my measurements as loud as possible because that's going to give me the loudest system, I hope that today's tutorial has explained why that's not the case and why it's not a good reason to do your tuning that way. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of today's tutorial, and once again, as always, if you've got questions or comments, please chuck them down below. I'm happy to get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, guys, I will catch you in the next episode.